Good afternoon and welcome to the on-record portion of the Rockbridge Report. I'm Brooke Sutherland and joining me today is Heidi Schweizer, owner of Schweizer Associates, a local architecture firm. Thank you for joining me, Heidi. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Could you first start out and just tell me a little bit about how you first got into architecture?
Well, I come from a long line of architects. My father was an architect. Several great uncles and great grandfathers were architects who worked on buildings like the Eiffel Tower and the Capitol building in Washington. And my father worked for Frank Lloyd Wright, so he has a sort of romantic history with architecture as well. And so I followed in my father's footsteps.
Have you ever had any experience with Frank Lloyd Wright projects? Have you gone to visit any of them? Or?
Been to visit many of them, and of course have been the recipient of many stories told about Frank Lloyd Wright and stories of building the campus at Florida Southern College in Central Florida where my father worked.
What kind of design work constitutes the most of your work these days?
Residential, yeah.
Can you give me some examples of recent projects you've done?
The most recent project is my own house. After years of building houses for other people, I finally got to do a house that really represents my work as an architect and my goals for the direction that I'd like my work to go. And that's the house at 522 Taylor Street here in Lexington.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this house? I read that it was LEED certified.
Actually, it's not LEED certified.
Okay.
I am a LEED accredited professional. It's Earthcraft certified, and Earthcraft is a program for residential buildings. It received the Platinum certification, which is the highest certification that any house has received in Virginia, and it was also awarded the 2009 Earthcraft Virginia Single Family Project of the Year.
So what does that mean exactly to be LEED certified or to be Earthcraft certified? I mean, you hear today so many terms about being green and eco-friendly, and sometimes you never really know what those mean. So what is...
It's very confusing. And there are so many different programs out there for green building. And there's a lot of greenwashing going on, which is very prevalent in the industry right now. LEED is a program that falls under the U.S. Green Building Council, which started out primarily for commercial buildings. And they now have a LEED for Homes program and LEED for Neighborhoods program. To become a LEED accredited professional, you can come from any area of the industry. Earthcraft is a Southeastern program, and that's the program that I went with for the certification on my house. With Earthcraft, they educate builders, and then the building gets the certification. And it's really geared more toward residential work rather than commercial.
Can you tell me a little bit about your house and just about the design work that was involved?
Mm-hmm. The objectives of the design were to use as few materials as necessary to create dwelling beautifully. So I wanted to really look at modern materials and how to incorporate them into a postmodern dwelling. I wanted to incorporate certain motifs of the neighborhood. I live on a street that has historic homes, some of them very simple and some of them very ornate, very Victorian. So I borrowed elements of architecture to try to blend the house into the neighborhood while leaving it sort of thoroughly modern. It was oriented for passive solar design, so it takes advantage of the winter sun to warm the house and protects the house from the sun in the summer, keep the house cool. Has polished concrete slab, which is the thermal mass of the house, which keeps the house cool in the summer and warm in the winter when the sun heats it up. It has a very tight thermal envelope, which means it has a high R value, high resistance to heat loss. And so it also is a very tight air envelope. So once the house gets warm, it stays warm, or once you get it cool, it stays cool. Mm-hmm. You don't have as much heat loss. And so it's very efficient to operate. I also used as many local materials as possible. Didn't want to be shipping materials from long distances, so I looked for regionally manufactured products, like the concrete walls are from Superior Walls in Amelia, Virginia. Mm-hmm. The SIPS panels came from Danville, Virginia, all from regionally manufactured products.
So it sounds like a lot of your work really focuses on local materials and green design and also preserving historical features. What kind of market do you feel like there is for this kind of architecture work in the Lexington community specifically?
I hope there's a good market for it. I think there's definitely a good market for green residential building. The challenge is to get through all of the different criterias for green. What does green mean? And how can you put a certification on a house that actually means something, get through the greenwashing. I think as we go into this economic downturn, people are realizing they don't need houses as large as they used to. And so the not so big house concept has become much more prevalent, and that's certainly one that I embrace.
Talking about the recession, I mean, the home industry in general took a huge hit, from architecture to interior design when the real estate market collapsed. How have you managed to keep your business afloat in these tough times?
Challenging. I think really it's about reinventing yourself every day. And that's been sort of the way I've operated for years, even when times were good and we were building spec houses or building multifamily. Taking a look at the market every day and deciding what does the market want, what can we sell, how long will that market last. The market can change so fast, it's fickle. So phasing projects is, I think, important. And then just looking every day at what resources do I have and who wants what I have to offer.
In terms of other projects you worked on, I know you mentioned you worked on the Hess building and the Healthy Food Co-op. Did those bring in the green design elements that we were talking about?
Some of them did. Actually, all of them did in some very important ways, and that is reuse of materials. The small building that's behind the Hess building it's actually registered to be a LEED certified building. I hope to finish the paperwork to get that first LEED certified building in the city of Lexington, where we focused on reusing everything that we could, even the flooring that was taken out of the building to shore the building up and make it more structurally sound was brought back in, relaid, and refinished.
Okay. In terms of the awards that you won, now those were for your own house, but I'm guessing those had a lot of meaning to you. What does that mean to you, especially being a woman in a very male-dominated industry, to win those awards and to get that kind of recognition?
You know, it's interesting. I never separated myself out from the boys. I mean, I've always known I worked in a male-dominated field. I think it's probably more important for me, not so much as a woman architect, but a woman as a general contractor. That sets me apart probably more than being an architect.
How do you mean?
There are far fewer women contractors than there are women architects. And that's a harder field to negotiate in. It's hard to describe, but it's a different, you're not in a professional environment there. You're out in the field with construction workers, and it's a different ballgame.
Have you had any crazy experiences of being out in the construction field?
I've had really good experiences, actually. I enjoy being on a construction site, and I enjoy pulling together a crew where if you get it right, you get all your subcontractors, they know each other, they like each other, they help each other out, and everybody's really there working as a team. And architecture is more of a sole endeavor for me because I don't work in a large company anymore. And so when I'm working as an architect, I'm working by myself. But when I'm building something, I'm working as part of a team.
Well, just passing by construction sites, I mean, there's so many images associated with it. And I know you went to Randolph-Macon College, which was an all-women's school. I mean, does that, just the different environments, does that create any kind of contrast between being in an all-women's school and being at an all-male construction site?
Yeah, it's interesting. I loved going to an all-women's school. And I think I liked that the absence of the male persona there, except for instructors. It took a lot of pressure off. Girls weren't competing for how they looked or being intimidated by, you know, raising their hand in class, that sort of thing. So that was a great experience. I never really thought about it contrasted to what I do now, where I'm thrown into a male-dominated field. So
you haven't felt any particular challenges to assert yourself or anything like that?
No, actually I generally feel like when I'm in the position of power, when I'm in control of the job site, and my work, the subs I work with are very respectful. Who knows what they say when they turn their backs? I don't know.
Well, you've also faced other really big challenges in your life. I know you are a bone marrow transplant survivor, and I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that experience and how that's maybe shaped your outlook on life or your business philosophy.
Yeah, it's shaped my life in a lot of ways. And I know oftentimes we'll hear cancer survivors say, if I had it to do over, I wouldn't do it any differently. You know, cancer brought me lessons that I would not have learned otherwise, and I'm definitely one of those individuals. It was cancer that brought me to Lexington, because when I was diagnosed, I was told I had 5 to 7 years to live, and I didn't want to be in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I came here, family was here, I had support. And then had to figure out how to make a living, because I didn't have a job here. So I opened up an architectural practice. I was already licensed, and went to work. So again, it goes back to that motif of every day you look around and reinvent yourself or redefine yourself or redescribe what you're doing in order to expand your creative will to create livelihood.
So did you break out and start your own architecture firm after you came to Lexington then?
I had been self-employed before. I had worked as a residential designer in Florida for probably about 10 years before I did my master's degree in architecture. And so I had some experience being self-employed. And my father was self-employed, so I had that format to sort of lean on.
How much of a role did your father just play on your business strategy? And we've talked about all the other influences in your life, and you mentioned him at the very beginning, as working for Frank Lloyd Wright, and you followed in his footsteps. It's
interesting to me that my father did not want me to be an architect. And he was an old school, you know, this is a man's world, and honey, don't you really want to be a realtor? And I said, no, I want to be an architect. So I followed in his footsteps, but not with his blessing. Now, in the end, I know that he was proud of what I did, but I became a different kind of architect than he did. He became an architect that worked for deep pockets clients, you know, large custom homes. And I'm really more inclined toward affordable housing. And so our practices varied, but I did note that he wasn't a very good businessman, which is why when I went to Randolph-Macon, I studied economics and not art.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on today's portion of the On Record portion of the Rockbridge Report. I'm Brooke Sutherland.